Alright, let's do the damn thing. My name is Bailey, and welcome to Haunts with Hoff. My last name starts with Hof, so naturally the channel name just kind of makes sense of what else could it possibly be. I am someone who has been known as Halloween Queen since a very young age. I just love Halloween. I eat, sleep, breathe Halloween. My house stays decorated year round for Halloween. It just never ends. I'm all about everything spooky, ooky, and kooky. Shout out to the show Wednesday, which I've also been obsessed with recently. I love everything about this time of year. So, what better way to share my love than start a channel completely revolving around the paranormal? And I can't start this channel without giving a massive shout out to some other creators here on YouTube. I'm going to put them all on the screen over here, but now these creators, if you haven't heard of them, you need to go watch their videos right now. This is like the top of the line for paranormal investigating. These are the people you should be watching. These are the most raw, real, reactive people, and they actually engage with the spirits and they don't just jump at things. I just want to thank these people so much because watching their content over the last few years, I've just gotten so much joy from it. I love getting to watch them and their humor and their personalities on screen, and I idolize them a lot. And they've been a big reason as to why I got even more in love with Halloween and the paranormal, is just their passion for it too. It just kind of feeds off through the screen. And so I started this venture because it just seemed like the right time. And I have to thank them so much. I also have to throw out some random shout outs because obviously starting a YouTube channel, it'd be weird for me, if you know me, to not shout out some other channels here that I am just constantly watching. I mean, if you know me, you know I'm watching these channels every single day, at least one video. And it's these guys, okay? I love the Sterniolo triplets. If you need a good laugh, highly recommend going and watching literally any one of their videos. I don't think there's a single one you won't laugh at. They are such genuine, kind people, and no, I've never met any of these people I'm talking about. It's just, again, the feelings that you get through the screen are so humanizing, and these guys are just hilarious. I love them so much. My mom and I love watching them, and I just can't thank them enough because they've helped me laugh in some really dark times in my life, and they'll never even know it. Also, the You Should Know podcast, Cam and Peyton, obviously. Peyton and Cam, sorry if you want to go that direction, but I love watching them. I also love watching Mama Liv, who is Cam's wife, and they just had their baby, Malachi, so I've just loved watching all of that content too. So a little bit more wholesome content. And then my mom and I have also been watching a lot of Brennan Taylor, trying different food reviews. So just a lot of different people who have inspired me to be more vocal and just try something totally different, which is this. I would have never thought in a million years that I'd actually be posting a video on YouTube and thinking it would do something. But we're going to try it thanks to all those people that I had just mentioned because they've given me some inspiration and I look up to them a lot and hope to one day just be like them. When I was sitting down and coming up with what the heck do you do for a first YouTube video, because I've watched thousands of them, hours and hours and hours of YouTube videos, but what do you do when you actually start a channel? So what did I do? I went to Amazon and I bought a mic. For $30, and I bought a ring light. So we got those two things going for us. We do not have a professional camera. This is literally my laptop, so hopefully it's clear enough. I don't really even know. But obviously, again, I don't have equipment. I have a spirit talker on my phone that I use occasionally, but there's not really anywhere nearby for me to just go and investigate. And it's, if I use my phone, then I don't have a camera. So we're in a rough patch, okay? This is gonna start out ground zero here and we're gonna work our way up. So for the first video, I decided to do my top 5 places I want to go. And what better way to start off than my home state of Minnesota? So today we are going to be talking about my 5 locations that would be first on my list to go visit once we get enough growing here. I don't know how else to say that. Until we get something cooking here that I can actually go and investigate these, we're just going to talk about some history and why they are on my top 5. All right, so we are starting off with the Palmer House Hotel, which is in Sauk Center, and a lot of you who are not from Minnesota are probably going to pronounce that really wrong.
So let me tell you, it's sock center. Okay? Sock, like what you put on your feet, center, like the center of a circle. That's how you pronounce that word. Okay? Minnesotan here teaching you. Now, this was originally built in 1863, but it burnt down to a fire that, from my research, there's no evidence as to why it burnt down. A little sketchy, but it was rebuilt back in 1901, even after the multiple casualties. God damn it, you two. But it also took many lives with it when it burnt. Now, just a mere year later, they had rebuilt the whole entire thing on top of the same exact grounds. You guys know what that does to the paranormal. So let's talk a little bit about some of the hauntings that are happening there. There is a young boy, a child is often heard bouncing a ball in the hallways, and sometimes they claim to see him running around the hotel. Now, again, I couldn't find any more information about the little boy, if he had any significance there, lived there, or had extended stays. I'm not 100% sure. There's also a tall man, a tall figure, that has been seen observed standing at the foot of guests' beds, specifically in rooms 11 and 17. Now, obviously, if you know me, if I go visit this place, I'm staying in one of those two rooms, if not both of them. That's what I want to do. I want to see this. Who is this tall man figure? Why is he hanging around? What is his history? I want to know it all. There's also Annie the cat, which I thought was kind of interesting, and she's mostly in room 11. Guests have reported hearing cats meowing and feeling the presence of a woman named Annie. So kind of interesting, wondering if there's a little reincarnation to this cat, if there was an Annie in its past history that reincarnated and now it's staying in this hotel. And Sinclair Lewis, who was a famous author, he had worked as a bellboy at the hotel in his young age, and he even said he sensed a haunt premises kind of feeling when he was there, working as a bellboy in his young age. So there was a lot going on even from the very beginning. There's a lot of mysteries here, a lot of unexplained noises and movements. Staff and visitors have experienced disembodied voices, objects moving on their own, and a lot of sudden temperature drops. It is called the most famous haunted hotel in Minnesota, and it was nationally featured on shows. So naturally, I need to go check this place out because I'm very invested in knowing what exactly is going on here. There's a lot of spirits, but what is their story? And that's something I would figure out if I got to go there. Now, the next place I've done a little bit more digging on because this is somewhere I've kind of known about for a few more years than the Palmer House, and I already have tried to plan visits to, but it's the Glen Sheen Manor in Duluth, Minnesota. And if you've heard of this place, you know that it's got a quite wild history to it. Now, Chester and Clara had bought the property back in 1905 when they started construction. This place is massive, 39 rooms, 22 acres, and it's perched perfectly on Lake Superior. I'm going to insert some photos because you guys got to see this. And now, obviously, I'm a Minnesotan. I love lakes. I'm a lake girl. Any day of the week, you can put me on a lake and I'll be the happiest person ever. So, naturally, this looks like the beautiful home that I would dream of. But there's tragedy that has struck in there and made it not so bright. Now, with this, Chester and Clara, they had 7 kids, and one of those who was most important was Elizabeth. And after Chester and Clara had died, Elizabeth took over the estate. Now, with that, she also adopted 2 children, Marjorie and Jennifer. Those will be important later. You can know where this is going. Now, unfortunately, Elizabeth, as time went on, obviously, when you grow older, her health started to decline, and she suffered a stroke, which paralyzed her on one side of her body, leaving her wheelchair bound and also needing medical assistance around the clock, which led to them hiring on a nurse who would stay in house and take care of Elizabeth. Now, this is where tragedy struck for the Glen Sheen Manor, and it was on June 27th of 1977. It is alleged that an intruder came through the back door or back window and then proceeded to kill Thelma Patila, who was the nurse on site that night, and she had actually come out of retirement to help cover for another nurse that night. But they had her on the stairwell and then proceeded to Elizabeth's room where they murdered her as well. It was originally thought to be robbery because there was a lot of misshoveled items around the house, and even Velma, who was the nurse, her car was missing. Seems really odd. But as they began to do a little bit more investigating, they found some details that led to a very different suspect. Now, Marjorie, do you remember Marjorie? She was one of the adopted daughters of Elizabeth. It was found that just a few days before the murders, she had authorized a paper allowing 2.5 million of the 8 million she would inherit from her mother upon her passing to her then husband Roger. This was her second marriage. She had a first marriage and Roger was her second. She was set to inherit $8 million from her mother, Elizabeth, and just days before her tragic death, authorized a paper allowing Roger to have 2.5 million of hers. Seems a little odd. Now, there was also evidence that just the day after the murders, Roger was seen in Golden, Colorado, opening a safe deposit box. And it was noted that upon noticing him, he was very disheveled and disturbed almost. And he also had wounds on him that were not present just a few days earlier. Leads up to a lot here. Now, they were both tried and convicted, but Roger was kept on the full sentence due to the DNA findings on the envelope, which were obviously a 99% match. Go figure, there was evidence of him putting the envelope in the safety deposit box. Now, this didn't end the crime report for Marjorie. She went on to commit several other crimes, including robbery, theft, and even another possible murder. Now, her third husband was had a sudden death, and there is no documentation or confirmed evidence that it was Marjorie's doing, but there's some other things that Marjorie had done in the past that were questionable, to say the least, such as when Marjorie and Roger were found in a hotel in Bloomington just after the funeral of her death, or of her mother's death, excuse me. Roger had passed out and ended up being transported and required medical attention because there was found substances in his body that were significantly high, and it was the same exact drug that she administered to her mother a few years earlier, and it was homemade mayonnaise. Now, you know what I'm getting at. It wasn't homemade mayonnaise. It was a prescription drug that she had crushed up and put in mayonnaise, put in the sandwich, and then obviously it led to the consequences. So Marjorie, in my opinion, was out to get her mother and her husband's, no matter what cost, to get the monies. She wanted the green. That was the end of it. And Marjorie then lived off in Colorado, and that was kind of the end of it. And from what I did on Jennifer's digging, her sister, her adopted sister, wanted nothing to do with Marjorie, and even had admitted several times to different reporters in the time that this happened was she's guilty. Jennifer was like, she did this. This was 100% Marjorie, and I know it. So that's the history. Now let's get into the paranormal accounts. Now, again, Glen Sheen Manor is open to the public and you are allowed to go tour it, but a lot of times when you go tour this location, they won't bring up the tragedy that happened there, which makes sense. It's probably not good for money, but if you do ask the tour guides about what happened in specific details, they will start to tell you more. So, if you guys want me to go, help me out. But a little bit about the hauntings. Now, it's been seen a lot of shadowy figures. They've claimed to see this in moving through the hallways, and most of the time it's along the staircase, which is exactly where the nurse, Velma Patella, had passed away. Now, there's also cold spots, sudden drops in temperature between different areas, especially, again, the landing of the staircase, which makes sense. I mean, Velma was cut very short of her life, and she had done a good gesture by covering another nurse that night. She came out of retirement, she covered the nurse, so Elizabeth was continuing care just to have her whole life ended. Now, there's a lot of apparitions as well. Some individuals have reported seeing figures dressed in period attire, so it'd be very fitting for the time that this manor was an actual establishment for a family. There's also unexplained noises, doors opening and closing by themselves, footsteps echoing in empty rooms, and so on and so forth. Now, again, I would love to go visit this place just for the means of how beautiful the estate is and the views of Lake Superior. I mean, I think I would just tip over right then and there. But if you guys want me to go take a peek and see if I can do a paranormal tour, again, like the video, help me get there. Let's build this channel so that I can go out in person and start doing these things. Now, the third on my list, again, not in any particular order, but it's just the third I thought of, was the Wabasha Street Caves. Now, this has always been a place I've heard about and is a little bit more popular on this list, but I've never gotten the chance to go myself, so obviously here it remains. It opened in 1840, originally starting as a mining site for silica, and you probably understood what silica is. It's the little packet when you buy new shoes, or if you're chowing down on a pack of beef jerky, the little thing that says do not eat. That's what they were mining for. It transferred then into a mushroom farm and then a prohibition speakeasy, which then transformed into a nightclub, and then eventually in the 1930s it became a massive hangout for gangsters. And it's said to be that most of the hauntings are coming from gangsters who met their fate in those caves and then their bodies were never discovered. So it's only assumed that their bodies were buried in the caves as well. Which gangster activity would make sense. They don't obviously want to transport a body, they don't want to cause any alarms to outside people. What better way to just toss them off in the cave and call it a day? Now, a lot of the hauntings here are obviously apparitions. Visitors and employees have even cited shadowy figures and full body apparitions. They're often dressed in 1920s gangster outfits, which again just reinstates that the gangsters are the ones haunting. It's nothing that was, excuse me, it's nothing that was prior. One such apparition is said to be a man adjusting his tie in front of a mirror just outside the men's room. Would love to figure out who that is and why he's still there. There's also disembodied voices, unexplained whispers, and echoes of laughter have been heard, especially near the areas that once were the speakeasy, which again makes sense to what the history is of that place. Lots of cold spots and different variations. Poltergeist activity. Yeah. Objects have been known to move on their own, and unexplained footsteps have been heard when there is no one else present. Okay, here's the one that's the most interesting to me is the vanishing bartender. Now, there's a ghostly figure of a bartender, and he is said to appear behind the former speakeasy bar, but then disappear shortly after. Like he's just doing his normal routine. That's his job. He's there to serve you drinks. I've seen in a few different investigations of, Sam and Colby, I think have done it, and I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to think of the other one. I want to say it was Elton. Um, have done it where they poured out a drink for the spirits and said, let's have a drink together. Sounds like a hoot of a time for me. So, again, let me know if this is a place you guys would love to see me go. All right, fourth on the list, again, one that I hadn't really heard of prior to digging into some different locations here in Minnesota, but it is Anoka State Hospital. Now, this is more than a state hospital. This was actually opened in 1900, and it was the first state asylum for the insane. First state asylum for the insane. Okay, so it wasn't just a hospital. It's different. And it also adopted the cottage plan, which was at that time aimed to provide more of a human environment rather than an incarceration kind of environment. Now, they often used restraints, isolations, confinement, and even the electroconvulsive therapy, which, if you don't know what electroconvulsive therapy is, it is not good. It is traumatizing and extremely harmful to these patients. And even some of the accounts I found, it was done without supervision. So these patients were just put in there and left. That's pretty bad. Now, it closed in 1999 due to the changing of mental health care practices, thank God, because an institute like this would not do well today. Now, the hauntings in this location, obviously we have apparitions. Witnesses have reported seeing shadow figures and full-bodied apparitions, often in the windows of the abandoned cottages. Now, there were several cottages as the hospital asylum grew, where they had to place the patients, and these became very overcrowded very quickly due to the increasing patient count. So it makes sense as to why these cottages are a little bit more of a hotspot. They were overcrowded, and I can't imagine the trauma and the abuse that these patients were going through while in there. Also, disembodied voices, unexplained laughter, whispers, footsteps have been heard, as well as echoes through the hallways, particularly in areas that once housed the patients. So, again, it's very localized to where the patients were housed. It's not just these common ground areas, it's more specific to where they probably spent their last days. A lot of cold spots, sudden drops in temperature, and photographic anomalies, which is kind of interesting. So, some visitors have even captured images with unexplained faces or figures, mostly in the vicinity of Cottage 8. This is known as the darkest Minnesota haunted spot. So, obviously, if I had to put these in order, it's probably my number one. So, again, like I've said the last 3 times, if you guys want me to go there, help a girl out. Like the video, comment on the video, share the video. Let's get me on scene and actually doing a little bit more investigative work on the grounds instead of just talking about it. Now, when picking my last location, I wanted to pick a location that I had never heard of myself, right? Because I wanted to expand my knowledge and my depth on the paranormal within my own state before I start to get outside of it. And this is called Gray Cloud Island. Now, if you've heard of this, please let me know because I have never personally, and I'm very much well versed in the paranormal and what popular locations there are. Now, this is near Cottage Grove, and it originally got its name from a Dakota woman who had resided there in 1838 to 1847. And as you can imagine, it was very much a Native American grounds. Now, due to its location, it had significant concentration of burial grounds, and most of these tragic deaths that were happening due to different wars from the Native Americans, they were ended up buried on this island. Now, obviously, that relates to a lot of why it's still haunted. That's a heavy and somber atmosphere, as it's mentioned here, is that a lot of times people will feel that from the burial grounds of the ancient. But also, there's a lot of unfulfilled rituals, and it's known that a lot of lost souls and unfulfilled rituals have deepened that island's mystery. So I'm really curious to go find that out. And then also just the tragic events, like I had mentioned, of forced relocation of Native Americans and then having to fight for their rights and their well-being in wars. It obviously caused a lot of harm to them spiritually and physically. Now, hauntings. This one by far, and again, this is why I left this to be the last one because I knew it was going to be better than the rest just because I had never heard of it, and so it would make me more excited. The hauntings at this location are way more specific, right? We're not just talking, oh, apparitions or cold sensations or I felt heavy. No, these are like literal things. So the first one, green lantern apparition. A green lantern is seen, oftentimes, glowing in the distance, mostly through the cemetery and throughout the woods. Now, a lot of people have contributed this to be the chief Gray Cloud, who would often wander the woods while he was carrying a lantern. And I can't tell you how excited I would be to go see that in person. I mean, how crazy would that be? And to be able to validate that it is Chief Gray Cloud. Is it him? Walking around with a lantern at night? The next one is actually we're gonna skip. I'm gonna do a different one first because I want to save this other one for last. So we have obviously disembodied voices and sounds. This is nothing crazy, but they do often hear child whispers saying, "Don't come back," and the sound of beating drums on full moon nights, which is again very cultural to Native Americans. They often will play music and stuff. So full moon night, you're probably gonna hear the beating of drums and even some alarming sounds of don't come back here. We don't want you here. Obviously, there's some figures that have been seen, mostly this translucent man who is seen dressed in red flannel and an orange hat, carrying a rifle and smoking a cigarette. Now, if I tell you how many different times I read about apparitions, that's an extremely detailed apparition. Like, you can see down to the fact that he's smoking a cigarette. That's pretty crazy. And one visitor had claimed to see this figure, and then as soon as she looked back, he was in her car seat. He was in the back seat of her car. Now, I don't know if this is a Native American spirit or if this is a hunter that had tragically passed on the island, but to see that vivid of a person. You can see the red flannel, the orange hat, the rifle, and then even the smoking cigarette. You see it in the distance looking at you. You kind of just think, whatever, okay. And then you look behind you and it's literally in your backseat of your car. What do you do? What do you do? Like, who are you? What attracted you to me? Why are you here? What can I do to help you right now? I don't know. Just very interesting to me how detailed it is. There's also car malfunctions, stories of vehicles losing power near the cemetery gates, only to start functioning again once moved away from the area. I wasn't able to find, like, how did they get it away from the area? Because again, my critical thinking brain goes to, well, if it started malfunctioning and you didn't have power, how did you move it from the cemetery gates to be able to get it to fire again? Did you really push the car that far, or did it just never happen? And the last one that I think is probably the craziest and straight out of a horror movie. You couldn't name it any better. It is the phantom white pickup truck. Now, this is a reoccurring legend too, so you know it's a little bit more validated. And it's this white pickup truck that will appear out of absolutely nowhere. It will tailgate you, and then all of a sudden it just vanishes, never to be seen again. Is this the white pickup truck of the red flannel guy? Is this who is? I love knowing the why. I'm such a why person. You know, those toddlers who ask why 800 times. You just kind of say, I don't know, I don't know. I'm that. I want to know the whys and I want to be able to deep dive and dig into this. And from what I've looked online, there is nothing. So the only way for me to go figure these things out is to go in person. And obviously, we need to grow this channel so that I can be able to go do those things. So please help me out. Let's go see if we can find the white truck and the red flannel guy and the Green Lantern. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the first episode of Haunts with Hoff. I really hope you guys enjoyed this and got some kind of information or excitement out of it for what's to come. And please like the channel, comment, subscribe, share, do all the good things. Let's get this thing rolling so that I can actually go out in person and investigate these on site. It's just a dream of mine, and I've never really wanted to act on it until now. And I don't know what's making me do it now, but we're doing the thing. So I'm just excited to see what's gonna come out of this. And again, thank you for watching this video if you made it to this point. Thank you to my idols in this world, besides my family and my parents, obviously. But I look up to those YouTubers quite a bit, and I just can't thank them enough for posting the content that they do and allowing some of us to have good times even in the bad. And I just hope to be that for someone else as well, and also be able to share my love for Halloween and the paranormal, and one day just be like them. So thank you, thank you, thank you for watching this video. I can't, again, speak it enough. I could probably talk for another 30 minutes of just thanking people, but yes. So that was Hans with Hoff, and as always, stay spooky.